when people are not held accountable for their actions, you see that there's a repeat and the cycle continues. That the police is obligated to inform a next of kin or a family member. So when you keep a suspect incommunicado, it's more like illegal detention. I put it that way. You see where a complainant would even tell
the
the police what to do. So a suspect will be held at the behest of a complainant.
In 2006, Kazim Sani, a commercial motorcyclist, was arrested over an alleged stolen phone worth 18,000 naira. No witness ever showed up to testify against him. He sat in prison for 10 years before a Lagos High Court finally struck out the case in 2016. In 2026, reports surfaced of a man who spent 20 years in detention over an alleged theft of 53,000 naira. The ECOWAS court ruled against Nigeria for holding a man without trial since 2009. 16 years, no conviction, before the court ordered his release. Ibukun Ajigbotesho was arrested in 2020 and spent 3 years fighting to prove his innocence from inside a cell. According to the Nigerian Correctional Service, over 2,000 inmates have spent more than 10 years in custody without trial. As of 2023, more than 52,000 people nationwide were awaiting trial. Some human rights groups have documented people held 10 to 14 years, and in extreme cases, longer. Welcome to First Take by First Daily. I'm your host, Omotayo, and I have a really special guest with me today. On set with me today is...
I'm Amaka Jampriye. I'm a legal practitioner, and I have a law firm that is based in Lagos.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you gracing our set today.
You're welcome.
So, Ma, as of 2023, more than 52,000 people nationwide were awaiting trial. Some human rights groups have also, documented people being in jail, held in jail without trial from like 10 to 14 years. In worst cases, even more than 14 years. So why is this happening in 2026? Why is this still the case in 2026?
Well, I would say there are a couple of factors that are contributing to this. Should I call it a menace? I mean, because the awaiting trial issues has been, it's something that has been long coming, and then there have been efforts to also work on it, to decongest the prisons and all that. But I would say, starting from the root cause, the police are quick to arrest, but they are very poor in investigating. I mean, if matters that are brought before the police are properly investigated, and the police does a thorough job at that, there are some matters that shouldn't even make it to the court in the first place. So I feel like it's something that that is deeply rooted in every institution, going from the police, the DPP, the legal aid, the courts. So it's a whole lot, and then it requires that all hands should come on deck, so that we have a situation where there is not just access to justice, but then justice should not be delayed, and then cases that shouldn't make it to court shouldn't even come to court in the first place. So, and also there are so many hurdles, verification where even bail is granted, because sometimes these inmates you see in prisons or correctional centers, they've been granted bail, but then sometimes they're unable to meet the bail conditions. Sometimes some of them are able to meet parts of the bail conditions. It could be possibly verification of shorties, addresses, and all that. And so if the system can work too, maybe we have a good tracking system where, for instance, the recent issue that had to do with Shore, he was released on bail on self-recognizance, right? So if we have a system where the database is working, sometimes we do NIN, we do BVN, we do all these things, and then we begin to wonder,
does it even work?
I mean,
Oh,
so if we have a system where everyone is traceable,
yeah. People is accountable for it.
you can easily grant bail because bail is, I mean, bail should be granted for bailable offenses. So you can easily grant bail knowing that you can always get the person to attend court because this person is traceable. You can easily track this person based on systems that are on ground. Okay, and then when it has to do with when the matter has moved to the court, sometimes we have few judges and then so many cases. Some of the court dockets are congested. You get to court sometimes and then you have about 60 matters on the list for a day. So you can imagine.
Yeah.
So it's something that the whole system has to be overhauled, right from the police before the matter is moved to court, and then the procedure, how it takes place. The chief judge also has the power to make practice directions that would oversee and make sure that matters are heard on time. And so to see how these cases can be, attended to, and then the court can be decongested, and then invariably we'll have a correctional center where people do not just stay endlessly waiting for trial.
But do you think the police have a hand in this, like the example of this Kazim Sani, the motorcycle rider who was in jail for an alleged crime, and his case was not taken to court, and he stayed there for like 10 years before the case was eventually taken off the ground and everything. Do you think the police have a role to play in that, in these congested cases that we're having now in Nigeria?
Like I said earlier,
Maybe like a personal vendetta or something.
well, sometimes they claim to be doing their jobs, but I feel like investigations should even be made prior to arrest. In saner crimes, you only make an arrest where you have like substantive evidence against the person. You see, maybe like in the movies, I mean, you see where you see police maybe perhaps trailing a suspect, trying to gather their evidence and all that before the eventual arrest. But here in Nigeria, the reverse is the case. You quickly go to arrest, and then they are now trying to gather evidence. Meanwhile, it should be the reverse. You should have your evidence, and then you now go ahead to effect the arrest based on your overwhelming evidence that, oh, this person, you know, is culpable for this offense. Now, in that kind of matter, now it's possible. It might not be personal vendetta. It might just be the system that failed him. It's possible because, I mean, although there are times where you can't, I mean, we can't say maybe an individual might have a personal issue with a suspect, or perhaps the complainant is funding. You see where a complainant would even tell
the
police what to do. So a suspect will be held at the behest of a complainant, and then the police would be following or taking instructions from a complainant on what to do. But the good thing is that people should get to understand that you can actually enforce your rights. We have the fundamental right enforcement rules that has to do with enforcement of your fundamental right when it is breached. When someone is unlawfully detained for that long, beyond, the law provides for 24 hours, max 48 hours, depending on the circumstance. I mean, so if someone has been detained beyond the prescribed or statutory, required time for the person to be detained, then I think there should be an avenue for recourse to the court to seek justice. A recent matter that was handled by my firm, someone was detained for 6 months. He wasn't taken to court. He was detained for 6 months. And then eventually we filed for enforcement of his fundamental human rights. And at the end of the day, the court awarded damages, 20 million naira. Yes. It's just that sometimes Nigerian, most times we have this. No, aside that, sometimes we are so religious and say, let's leave it for God.
True.
And so the system keeps deteriorating because nobody is taking
willing to fight for.
And when nobody is being held accountable, when people are not held accountable for their actions, you see that there is a repeat and the circle continues. So I think it's a two-way thing. Yes, it's possible that in Kazim's case, he perhaps maybe was indigent, but even when you're indigent, we have the legal aid. We have the Office of the Public Defender. Okay, so, and there are some NGOs to CSOs to that also taking these things up. So you see that even the NDA too, you know, feel that too, So I feel like beyond being indigent, awareness, you should be
Sure.
aware of your rights and then know how to enforce it.
Enforce your right. All right, ma. So when police arrest someone and they don't inform their family, what's the legal difference between that and kidnapping?
I feel, I feel it's the same thing, but of
Mm,
course, it's just a matter of
police and
it's basically the same thing. But of course, the police is mandated to inform a suspect that this is the charge against you, this is why you're being
being
arrested.
arrested. Yeah.
Aside that, the police is obligated to inform a next of kin or a family member. So when you keep a suspect incommunicado,
Mm,
it's more like illegal detention. I
yeah.
put it that way.
Mm,
So the term for um, abducting someone could be kidnapping, and then the term for keeping someone without giving the person access to
access to
family
family. Yeah.
or communication with the family is illegal detention.
Detention.
Yeah, and the police can be held accountable, like I just mentioned to
Yeah.
you. I mean, there are laws, there are rules that can be enforced, but it now takes someone who is aware and someone who is now willing to fight. Because some people, once they are released from such illegal detention,
Mm,
they say
they let
praise the
it
Lord
go.
and then they go
Yeah.
and give testimony in church.
Mm,
But I feel like when we Nigerians, we as a people, we decide that everyone who makes or takes a wrong decision should be
should
held
pay for it.
accountable. At
Yeah.
that point, we'll see that we'll begin to advance. And people would, it will serve as like a deterrent to someone because people would now know that, oh, people, you will be held
Okay.
accountable if
Yes.
you do something wrong. Or, for instance, even the police officers, maybe a sanction that if you carry on illegal detention or any form of breach of
Mm-hmm.
fundamental human
Human
rights,
rights. Yeah.
perhaps you'll be denied promotion or something like that.
Mm.
Then at that point, you see that people would sit up knowing that there are consequences for every action.
All right, ma'am. So the Constitution guarantees legal representation. But then we see the case of, like I said before, Kazim Sani, who goes a decade without a lawyer moving his case. How does someone go a decade without a lawyer actually moving his case? And what does the law say should happen in such a case?
The Constitution provides for legal representation in criminal matters. Everyone
Mm,
should have legal representation in criminal, whether indigent or not. And also we have the Legal Aid Act, which also provides that indigent suspects, or should I say defendants, should be given a lawyer free of charge.
mm.
But then enforcing it, that's where the issue is.
Issue is.
We have these laws, but then most of these laws are not being implemented. And so it's a matter of everyone knows that perhaps um, everyone for should I say if you do not assign a particular role to a particular institution
Mm.
and then you leave it for everyone. I was saying something earlier that a goat that belongs to everyone will die of hunger
Mm.
because one would assume, the other person would assume that,
Okay,
oh,
the other person
must have
must
fed
have
the
fed the
goat,
goat, yeah.
and then the goat will eventually die of hunger. So we have the DPP there, that's the Office of the Prosecution, I mean,
Mm.
from the Ministry of Justice. We have the courts, we have lawyers too, we have correctional centers, we have the police. Nobody is raising alarm, no one is
Mm.
escalating issues. And so a file can be there and then it's not being attended to.
Mm.
So but if we have a specific institution that we can hold accountable, that you are the one responsible for this, and then if anything goes wrong you will be held accountable, you see that it makes it better. Because
Okay.
when you have an assignment that is not specifically assigned to someone or to a particular institution, then you see that every other person would assume that, okay, this person should take care of it,
Mm.
or this other person. I will give it up to the court. At least the courts try. Sometimes you're in court and then you see where a judge will just assign or even call for maybe lawyers at the bar if anyone is willing to take up a matter, especially criminal matters
Yeah.
specifically. And then some courts, sometimes too, some courts have assigned lawyers from the legal aid council, I mean, that, you know, take on cases
Cases
like that.
like that.
So the efforts are there, but more can be done, and then, there should be a specific institution that, ensures that no file is just there going cold and being unattended to, so that at every point something is happening, you know, at least there should be hearing when there's remand, there should be hearing of the matter and all that.
So, like you said nobody is being um like there's no particular body
Yes.
that is doing that. So, in a case where a case file sits for years, who's actually being held responsible for that? Like, it comes to light that, okay, this case has been here for a while and there's no particular body who is responsible for that. So, who is held responsible?
Unfortunately, no one is being held
Oh,
accountable
wow.
for it. That's the system where we are in. So it behooves you as a litigant to be proactive, to do the best you can to make sure that you are being represented in court. I would give an instance. It has now become practice for lawyers or for litigants to engage the service of a lawyer to watch brief in criminal matters. But ordinarily, if the prosecution is up and doing, I do not see the need for private lawyers to be engaged to watch briefs. So it behooves the litigant, as it were now, to ensure that I am being properly represented. But that should not be the case. A criminal offense is an offense against the state, and the state prosecutes, But then you see that you as a complainant, you would have to, you know,
Go the
be
extra
active.
mile, yeah.
Yes. Otherwise, your matter will just be
Just
there,
there.
and then you might not get the justice that you seek. And sometimes too, there are some other hurdles that you may have to face, challenges. There are cases where you'd see a lapse. Okay, now most times when a criminal matter is to come to court, it would first have to get to the magistrate court. The magistrate will definitely, after arraignment, remand the person. When it is a bailable offense, bail conditions will be given. Where it's not a bailable offense, perhaps the person would be there pending the DPP's advice. Now, where the DPP gives an advice and then the matter is to be filed at the High Court, the information is to be filed at the High Court, you will see that there is this lapse there. One of the matters that I conducted recently, we saw a situation where we couldn't lay hold on the defendant, and then we were informed that the defendant had filed for bail pending the filing of the information at the High Court. At some point, the file was untraceable.
Oh,
And
wow.
so we couldn't even trace the defendant. We couldn't trace the sureties. There was no way to, get a hold on the defendant, to come and attend his matter. So you see that access to justice sometimes is delayed. Sometimes the litigant will get frustrated. The complainant may get frustrated, especially when funds are being put in and then you're not seeing the desired results. You might get frustrated and discouraged. So you see that some people are willing to, access this justice at all costs, but then challenges, hurdles might just come up, and then you see that you give up.
It's quite unfortunate. So, in 2025, the ECOWAS court ruled against Nigeria for holding a man without trial since 2009. So, this case, it took an international court to get justice that should have come from Nigeria. The question now is, whose job is it to fix this issue at home? Is it the judiciary, or is it the Ministry of Justice, the NBA, police, or the National Assembly?
Like I said earlier, there is no specific institution that has the job to make sure that a defendant gets access to justice. It takes the DPP, it takes the courts, it takes the correctional centers. I mean, the correctional centers too have the duty to bring the person to court. So you can imagine where they say we do not have fuel to convey the person to court. Do you see that it's a circle? Like it's not just one institution being responsible. The judge has the responsibility to hear the matter. The legal aid has the responsibility to provide legal representation where the person is indigent. The lawyers to have so you see that the police too has their own role to play. So it takes everyone, and that's why I've said earlier that a goat that belongs to everyone will die of hunger. So at some point, maybe they would even lose track as to, okay, what's the status of this matter? Except where you have maybe prosecutors who are active, or the person has a counsel watching brief or something like that. That's as regards the complainant now. But for the defendant, it would mean like everyone having a role to play. So if anyone is not up and doing, for instance, maybe the correctional centers, for instance, maybe they fail to produce the person in court. Okay, it might be an issue. Yes, they might have to track. Okay, where is this person and all that. And sometimes the case might just be there and nobody is doing anything about it. So it takes everyone, and that's why there's a need for us to create a system whereby there's a particular institution that is specifically saddled with that role, to ensure that anyone who is being arrested and perhaps remanded should gain, not just those that are being remanded, anyone who is being arrested for a matter or charged to court as regards any offense, the person should get access to justice. The matter should be heard, not just having a cloak of a criminal charge over your neck and then nothing is happening. Sometimes you come to court and then the matter is adjourned. Sometimes matters suffer several adjournments. There are different factors that could have contributed to that. So you see that ECOWAS had to intervene, not because we do not have not because we do not have perhaps a system. It's just that there is no political will, or there's no enforcement in place to ensure that these things that we have on paper, that they work, and we ensure that people get justice. And people are also, and then those that are behind bars would also gain justice. Like I always say, justice is a three-way traffic. So the person behind the bar should be able to get justice. The complainant should be able to get justice. The society as a whole should be able to get justice.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Lastly, what is that one policy change that you think could actually reduce the number of people awaiting trials in Nigeria? And what can ordinary Nigerians like ourselves do to push for it?
Well, I feel that the National Assembly should fund the legal aid. Because underfunding is also one factor too as well, so that they can everyone who is behind bar can have access to legal representation in court. Now the NBA too has a role to play. Visits to correctional centers should not just be of maybe charity purpose, but it should be institutionalized in a way that is our professional responsibility to ensure that visits are made to the correctional centers, and those who do not have lawyers are provided with legal representation. We shouldn't just leave it for NGOs or CSOs, or people are trying to, So everyone all hands should be on deck. Even as a Nigerian, you can also support NGOs. I mean, like another Nigerian, you can support NGOs that are into things like that, to ensure that people are able to get justice. So everyone is involved. Even I as a lawyer, every lawyer should take up at least one pro bono case every year. You could just, step into a correctional center. You can seek audience and then hear some of these matters. Some of them are very trivial. There are things that you could just handle, and then by so doing, if every lawyer would take up one matter, you can imagine the impact it would make eventually, because the correctional centers will be decongested, people will get access to justice, they would have legal representation, maybe at no cost for instance, So because sometimes what hinders people from getting access to justice is the fact that they do not have the funds. Some are aware, but then when they think about the cost implication, they just be like, let me leave it for God. So if lawyers too can come up, don't just leave it for NGOs. Let's take it as maybe giving back to the society,
Like a
you know,
charity.
take up one pro bono case at least every year, and then let's see how we all can put hands together to ensure that every Nigerian citizen can gain access to justice.
Thank you so much, Ma. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. A huge appreciation to Barrister Amaka for sharing insightful conversations with us. Also, if you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe to our channel and follow us on all our social media platforms. Also, do well to follow Barrister Amaka on all her social media platforms to catch up with what she's doing in the law industry. Thank you for joining us today and have a good day. See you same time next week. Bye.